I'd like to convene the Ways and Means Committee. We do have a quorum present, and we have the minutes from yesterday's meeting in the folder. Representative Olson.
Mr. Chair, I move the minutes from the April 11th meeting.
Okay, the motion is before us to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Our first order of business is the budget resolution, and we adopted the budget resolution back on March 25th, and we are going to be amending the budget resolution this morning to deal with the healthcare access fund. And so with that, I will move. Well, first of all, I've brought the budget resolution before us, and secondly, I will move the amendment. It's the A01 amendment dealing with the budget resolution. So that motion is before us, and what I'd like to do, because there are some moving parts, ask our nonpartisan staff, Mr. Marx, to explain what's happening with the budget resolution, if he's ready.
Mr. Chair, members, the A01 amendment sets the limits for 4 committees for the Healthcare Access Fund. Line 1.6, the $4.314 million for the Higher Education Finance Bill. This was discussed yesterday when we heard the Higher Ed Finance Bill. A limit of $357.769 million for the Health and Human Services Finance Bill. And again, this is a net target. It's the spending from the Healthcare Access Fund plus the revenue change in the Healthcare Access Fund. The revenue change items in this case include the repealing the repealer of the healthcare provider tax and the transfer of $142 million from the reinsurance account. Line 1.8 is $3.776 million for the state government finance bill. That'll show up in the state government finance bill later. These are appropriations to the Department of Revenue for processing the provider tax, and also a small appropriation to the legislature. And then line 1.9, $202,000 for the tax bill. This is tax refund interest on the provider tax, and then zero for all the other bills.
Okay, the motion then is before us. Any discussion? Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Marks, could you just reiterate what the amount on line 1.6 is? I didn't catch that.
Mr. Marks.
Mr. Chair, Representative Albright, this is the $2.517 million a year appropriation in the higher education finance bill that goes to the University of Minnesota that we discussed yesterday in committee.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor of adopting the A01 amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We'll now go to the next item on the agenda, which is House File 2086, Representative Ecklund. And by the way, as he's coming forward a little bit later after we take care of a couple of items of business, and we've had conversations with Mr. Kennedy, we will do like we did yesterday and take a recess of approximately 1/2 hour to discuss upcoming legislation. Representative Ecklund, would you care to move the division report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of the Veterans and Military Affairs Finance and Policy Division Report for House File 2086.
Okay, the motion is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Representative Ecklund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that House File 2086 as amended be recommended to be placed on the general register.
Okay, that motion is before us, and now there's an amendment by the author of the A5 amendment. Would you like to take the amendment now to put the bill in the order you'd like?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the A5 amendment and need to incorporate a technical oral amendment.
Okay, if you could tell us what that is, and then,
I would defer to Ms. Roberts, fiscal staff, to talk about the oral amendment.
okay.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm Helen Roberts from the House Fiscal Staff. When we were putting the amendment together, I missed putting a line to adjust the total for Department of Veterans Affairs, so if you could just instruct staff to adjust the totals, then we'll take care of it.
Okay. We will do that, and so that's incorporated in the author's amendment. Okay, any discussion on the amendment?
Just really quickly, Mr. Chairman, and to nonpartisan staff, just a reminder that nonpartisan staff never makes any mistakes. I'm sure that was not in there because Representative Ecklund told you not to put that in there, and we're simply correcting it. Thank you.
I think we all concur we have excellent staff, and if an error does take place, it's pretty rare. So we have the bill before us, or the author's amendment before us. Any discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Representative Ecklund on the bill.
Good bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair Member. This year's Veterans and Military Affairs Omnibus Bill has a target of $4.3 million above base funding. We fully funded the request from the Departments of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Military Affairs. The appropriation items in this bill are straightforward. We put new funding into MDVA's core program, which focuses on providing support to military members, veterans, and their families, and maintaining well-being through a partnership with Lutheran Social Services. We fund an expansion of the Armed Forces Service Center at Minneapolis Airport for a total of $100,000. And we also fund the Veterans Justice Grant, which is a finance piece to the Veterans Restorative Justice Act. There is also an appropriation of $150,000 for the completion of the Medal of Honor Memorial located on the Capitol Complex. This bill was authored by Representative Detmer. There are a few non-controversial policy items in this bill. I was proud to chief author of the Veterans Restorative Justice Act, which provides for alternative sentencing guidelines for veterans involved in criminal justice system who have experienced service-connected trauma, substance abuse, or mental health conditions. There are 2 minor technical fixes requested by MDVA and language cleanup that streamlines the process for assessing GI Bill eligibility. And there is also a provision requested by the Disabled American Veterans that allows data sharing between county assessors and county veteran services officers. This was a Representative O'Neill bill. This is the bill, Mr. Chair, members. It enjoyed bipartisan support in our committee, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion on the bill? Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Ecklund, I want to compliment you on putting together a very good bill. Certainly, this chamber has a long history of coming together in a bipartisan fashion on veterans issues, and you have honored that with your conduct as the chair of this division and working well, and encourage members on both sides of the aisle to support the bill. And once again, I'm proud of the fact that we'll be working together in a bipartisan fashion on this issue. Thank you.
Any further discussion? This is one that will be laying over temporarily to be incorporated later today in another bill. So thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
In fact, it'll be incorporated into, which one is it going into? What's the number? Oh, 1935, okay, is the one that'll be incorporated into. Yesterday, members, we had some discussions on a procedural vote, and so I've asked, being that his name was used in part yesterday, Mr. McCormack, who's with our nonpartisan research staff, to explain the discussion we had yesterday from the standpoint of what may or may not have been correct in our interpretations of the rule or rules as they would be dealing with when we have a motion before us to adopt a division report. So, Mr. McCormack, if you could give us some of that history, and then I think you've prepared that we should have or will receive a written commentary as well. But before we break, I want to give you an opportunity then for my request this morning to testify on the issue.
Mr. Chair, members, my name is Patrick McCormack. I'm Director of the House Research Department. The question of what the body or the committee is doing when they adopt a division report or a committee report has come up a lot in the last several years. It has a deep history. There has been litigation associated with this question, long memos and other background, and the question keeps coming up. In fact, as Representative Kresha noted yesterday, I was testified in the K-12 committee, and when asked about receiving a division report, my testimony was that, quote, if a member opposes something in a division report, they should vote against it. That was a direct answer to the question I was asked. Representative Carlson has asked me to revise and extend my remarks with a little bit of history. And the recent example of where this became an issue came up over a lawsuit on committee reports and floor fights that developed on what it meant when the body adopted a committee report. House Research and the Chief Clerk's Office and more attorneys than I would care to mention extensively analyzed the question. The answer we came up with has many nuances, but only one conclusion was drawn. That conclusion is that each individual member has to define for themselves the meaning of their action. When a division or committee report is put before the body or before this committee, the motion is to adopt the report. Often we describe things with the on the one hand, on the other framework. In this case, there really are two separate points. On the one hand, adoption of the report is a necessary procedural motion that puts the work of the last committee or division before the new body or committee, and therefore has been analogized to a cog in a legislative machine. These votes are often procedural, often routinized, and many members legitimately see these votes as procedural. On the other hand, this procedural motion is necessary to keep the bill alive, and if a member opposes something in a division or committee report, they should vote against it. This is because they do not want the bill to survive, even in a procedural sense. Sadly, this instance of parliamentary procedure does not create a bright line answer, specifically because the meaning of the vote is in the heart of the member voting, and only they can decide. Given that, when I'm asked, I usually advise caution in this instance in characterizing or ascribing motives to the vote of another member. What is procedural for one member is a policy statement for another member, and the legislature has to live with that ambiguity.
Okay, thank you. And are there any questions of Mr. McCormack while we're on? Because we did have that question raised yesterday, and I, if you'll recall, viewed it as a procedural vote, and Representative Kresha had a different viewpoint, and that's why Mr. McCormack is before us this morning. So, Representative Ruskowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. McCormack. Just quickly, what happens if that division report fails in this committee? Is the bill dead, or what is the outcome?
Mr. McCormack?
Mr. Chairman, if the last action on the bill is a failure of a division report, then the bill is dead.
Okay, any other questions? Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for inviting Mr. McCormack. I think the importance of this, and as you stated, there can be some ambiguity, but I think what we need to do, the responsibility we have, which is why I asked yesterday, is clarifying what the motion means, so each member can vote to the best of their knowledge. I think sometimes we, around here, this is why I brought this up, is we just pass things off and say, well, this is just procedural. That could be in a lot of things, but we should be very clear about what my yes or what my no means. So I appreciate you giving the opportunity to clarify that, because we do have to reconcile that as we vote. The only thing we do here is vote.
Yeah, and I think what I take away from my conversation with Mr. McCormack earlier and then today is that that's in the eye of the beholder in terms of how you casted that vote. Would that be a correct characterization, Mr. McCormack?
Mr.
In
Chair.
other words, we can't judge somebody's motives as to why they voted the way they did.
Mr. Chair, and that's why members state their motives before they vote usually.
Okay, that's a good point. You can state your motives. Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is very helpful. I appreciate you calling a timeout so that we can have this discussion. This may be a real obvious question, but I've never been shy about asking dumb questions. What does it mean then that the bill is dead? And you know, as members know, you know, nothing's over in a legislative body until we go sine die. And there's some humor in that, but frankly, I think there's a very important principle there, you know, which goes to the issue of legislators, and this is not a partisan issue, legislators constantly reflecting and reconsidering what they do. And, you know, we owe it to the public to always have that openness, regardless of, you know, what political persuasion is. And so I know we're talking about a technical issue here. So does dead mean that if anything that resides within that bill is still something that the body wishes to deliberate over, that it simply needs to find another vehicle within which to exist? So anyway, that's the nature of my question.
I would interpret that, you know, there are various options, and it would depend on the kind of bill that's perhaps before us. But in the case of what we've been dealing with in recent days, the omnibus bills, you'd have different alternatives, a motion to reconsider at some point, or you could reintroduce another bill that could be taken up. Those would be a couple of options. I don't know if Mr. McCormack has anything to add to that or not. Mr. McCormack?
Mr. Chair and members, when a bill is dead, it means that it's only a little bit less alive.
Therefore, a motion to reconsider would probably be in order. But, you know, obviously, we're dealing with major omnibus bills, major appropriations bills, so if that were to happen, there would have to be a way of figuring out how to move forward. In the case of the bills that have been before us this last week, you'd have the shutdown of major parts of state government, and you'd have to figure out one way or another to move forward. So any other questions? Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also appreciate your taking a few minutes to discuss this, because I think it is pretty important. I actually think that the real issue, if this is, you know, kind of within the heart of each member voting, the thing is that we are in a system here where what really matters is not what's in our hearts, but what our constituents take from what we do here. And you know, we don't run for election based on what's in our hearts. Our constituents look, I think, at not only what we say, but at what we do and what votes we take. And so I would say that it sounds like it's not so much up to each member, it's up to what other people make of what the member said or did, more so. And because of that, I wonder if this isn't one of those things that kind of begs for a solution. Taking what Mr. McCormack explained, it's kind of, I guess, the existence of this sort of uncertainty is kind of, you know, as everybody is experiencing here, is kind of unsatisfying because it doesn't help us go forward. And so my question, I guess, to Mr. McCormack is, if we as a legislature wanted to make this more clear so that we all understood the ground on which we are walking and how we would hold each other to understanding what our votes mean or don't mean, and how our constituents should look at what we vote on or don't vote on, how would we move forward to make this more defined?
Mr. McCormack?
Mr. Chair, members, there are legislatures which require, when a bill comes to the floor, that each of the amendments that have been put on in committee are separately voted on by the body, so that and that means when the agriculture bill comes to the floor and the 22 amendments that have been put on it come up before the floor, each one has to be actually voted on by the body. And those ways tie into the larger structure of how a bill becomes a law in that state, so they're not easy to directly adopt here. There have been discussions of a wide variety of reforms that sort of bring that kind of clarity to votes along the way. When we discussed this in the context of litigation several years ago, we adopted the change in procedure. Committees used to recommend that the bill pass. I recommend that the bill pass, and now we recommend that the bill is referred to its next stop. That was a way to, at that moment in time, clarify what the committee is doing and to change the language to make these motions more procedural, or at least the words more procedural. I think you're right, Representative Liebling. I don't think that there's a great deal of satisfaction with where we are right now. So it's a conversation for the future, I think.
And my intent this morning was to inform this committee as to where we are now. If something further were to be done, that wouldn't necessarily be, or wouldn't be the jurisdiction of this committee. It would be up to the Rules Committee to determine how you would move forward, as they did with the earlier court case that Mr. McCormack just referred to. But probably a good idea at some point that there be some clarification, but I wanted people to understand where we are today, being that the question came up yesterday. So any further questions of Mr. McCormack while he's here? Well, thank you, Mr. McCormack, and recess now then? Yeah. Just double checking when we were going to recess, and that's right now for approximately 1/2 hour. And the DFL members, we will meet in the same room we did yesterday, 400 North, and for approximately 30 minutes. And Representative Graffel,
272.
room 272 for the Republicans. Okay, we are in recess.
Take your yellow sheet.